The stillness of the room weighs heavily on your mind. Your breath shallow as you feel a presence close. It isn't the kind of presence that brushes past you in the mundane world. No. This presence reaches into the very marrow of your bones, and you know it isn't an illusion. You hear the whisper not with your ears but deep within your spirit, a sound that is felt more than heard. You must understand, the voice breathes, that all things were once in balance. The gods were not many, but one. And from this singularity, the heavens were forged. The words roll from the shadows, slipping from the darkness like the unspoken fragments of forgotten prayers. You shiver, as if the air has shifted, grown heavier, as if the weight of centuries presses against you. El, you whisper his name in the quietest breath. It should not be spoken, yet here it lingers, like a stain in the air. El, the origin god, once revered as the highest, the first of all gods. Before any other god claimed their thrones, it was El who held dominion over the sky, the heavens, and the earth itself. He was the creator of the divine order. Before the world knew of others, before the tempestuous storm god Baal or the vengeful Yahweh, there was only El, the father of all that came after. The world has forgotten him, his name, his form, his very essence erased by those who dared to usurp his power, to burn his memory from the sacred texts. They took his name and cursed it. No voice was left to speak his truth. You close your eyes, feeling the cold weight of the air press into your chest. His story has been sealed away, cast into shadow. You could feel it, the deep, unsettling silence that surrounds you now. It is as though you've come to stand at the edge of a precipice, gazing into a well that was never meant to be seen. But you are here, aren't you? Here, at the intersection of forgotten truths and forbidden knowledge, and the path before you leads into the abyss. Do you dare to walk deeper? This, then, is where it all begins. Whispering to the wind, you feel the weight of the sacred act now, pressing upon you, an unspoken invitation. You must listen, the voice murmurs, echoing through the stillness. It is time to hear what was lost. As you breathe in, the air is thick with the scent of incense, and faint echoes of ancient prayers rise from the ground beneath your feet. You know not from where they come, but they are there, woven into the very fabric of this place. You are no longer alone in this silence. El's presence, this forgotten god, lingers in the room with you, waiting. The candle flickers once. Your thoughts drift toward a deeper mystery. Who was El? Where did he come from? And why is it that his name has been erased from the world? The answers lie far beyond the veil of ordinary comprehension, hidden in the forgotten scrolls of ancient temples, sealed by those who feared him. The journey you are about to take is not one of simple discovery, but of descent. The world will never look the same once you enter this space of long-lost truth. You feel an insatiable thirst for knowledge beginning to stir in your soul, a thirst that will guide you into the very heart of the forgotten pantheon. A quiet murmur brushes against your mind, an unspoken promise. You will understand why El's memory was erased. And so, you must listen. For in the ancient world, there were no idle words. Every syllable uttered carried power, carried meaning, carried consequence. And this is the consequence of your action, of your decision to turn toward the forgotten gods. Now, let us turn the first page. The darkness around you feels thicker now, as if the very air has gathered, dense with secrets. You step forward, a slow and deliberate motion, each footfall seeming to echo in a world where time itself seems to have faltered. It is not the world you know, this place you have entered. It is older, ancient, filled with the weight of forgotten stories and long-lost truths. Before there was a name like Yahweh, before the storm winds of Baal howled across the heavens, there was El. El, the Creator, the sovereign who reigned not only over the heavens but also the earth, the seas and the skies. He was the first to separate light from darkness, to shape the mountains with his hands and breathe life into the oceans. His gaze, once so pure, cast itself over all things, and in his name, all that was could be. In El's time, there were no competing gods to claim the realms. His was a solitary power, and in his divine sovereignty, he spoke only to those who dared listen. His followers, the ancient ones, the primal peoples, worshipped him not with the great temples or grand altars that would later be built for other gods. No, they worshipped him in silence, in the solitude of the mountains and beneath the shade of the ancient groves. They did not dare speak his name aloud. They only whispered it, for it was a sacred thing, a forbidden thing. El is the unseen, the silent, the eternal, the first scroll said, etched in symbols now lost to time. He is the one who was first and who will be last. But the world is fickle, and the gods themselves are not immune to the erosion of time. The story of El's reign began to change as other beings, rival gods perhaps, grew in power. Among these, one name stood above the rest, Yahweh, the one who would rise to challenge El, whose followers would demand their place in the heavens. Yahweh, the God who would eventually cast El aside, stripping him of his crown and casting his name into shadow. The first blow struck not in the mortal world, but in the divine realm, where a silent war brewed, unseen by human eyes. It was a war between the old and the new, a war between divine order and divine ambition. El had been too gentle with his rule. His power was unyielding, yet there were others who sought to rise above him, to challenge him. They sought to claim the heavens for themselves. This was not the violent, tempestuous clash of titans that would come in later mythologies. No, this was a quiet rebellion, the rebellion of silence. El's reign faltered, not through force, but through the erosion of his influence. His followers, long devoted, began to slip away, drawn by the promises of new gods with new ideals. And Yahweh, ambitious and fierce, began to gather those who had once called El their king. Do not forget, the whisper comes again, a voice that is barely audible, as if it is fading, slipping from the present into the forgotten corridors of time. Yahweh was not always the one who ruled. He was once a challenger, one who had to rise from the shadows of El's realm. The gods of this era were not born of violence or conquest. They were born of ideas, of influence, and of the subtle twists of fate. What began as a quiet whisper of doubt turned into a divine schism, a rupture between the old order of El and the new order of Yahweh. El's realm began to crumble from the inside. His children, those who had once worshipped him, began to question his dominion. Was El truly the beginning and the end? Or had he simply ruled long enough for the world to forget there was ever another way? And so El's reign weakened. His realm began to slip away, not in a burst of lightning or a cacophony of thunder, but in the slow, inexorable fade of his worshippers' hearts. His name became a whisper, a soft breath lost in the winds of history. The divine began to scatter, to fracture. The Pantheon was no longer his alone. This is the curse of gods who fail to hold the hearts of their followers. They fade not in a violent destruction, but in the silence of abandonment. El's children, the very beings who were born from his creation, turned their eyes away. They began to hear the call of another, a God who promised them more than El could offer. It was in this silence, this slow disappearance, that El began to disappear. It was not a sudden event, not a sharp fracture. It was an unraveling, like the first threads pulled from a garment. His followers forgot the old ways, and soon the temples that had once stood tall in his honor crumbled to dust. El, the origin god, the creator, was lost to history. And as his name faded, so did the very realm he once ruled. But the mystery remains. Doesn't it? Why? Why did the world so easily forget him? Was El truly lost to time, or did something else happen? Something more nefarious? Something darker? It is a question that no one has yet answered. Not fully, not truthfully. And so, as the years slip into centuries, and the centuries into millennia, the name of El remains buried, not in books or scrolls, but in the very bones of the world itself, whispered only by the few who dare remember. The truth of his reign is a shadow, half remembered, a dream that fades each time someone wakes. The silence speaks louder than the thunder ever did. There are places where words die before they can be spoken. They exist not in the physical world, but within the very fabric of existence itself. These places are hidden, sealed away from the prying eyes of time. They are realms where silence holds more power than sound, where what is unsaid becomes the very foundation of reality. And in those places the language of El once whispered through the cosmos, a sacred and forbidden language that carried within it the weight of creation itself. The gods did not speak as mortals do. Their words were not mere sounds. They were power, imbued with the essence of being. They carried with them the potential to shape worlds, to bend time, to alter the fabric of the universe. But El's language was different. It was not meant for the ears of mortal beings. It was too pure, too ancient, too sacred to be uttered by any who were not bound to the divine. In the time before the world was torn asunder by those who would dare to challenge El's dominion, there was a language known only to the gods, a Iwam, language of silence. This sacred tongue did not require sound to be heard. It was felt, understood through the very core of one's being, passed down not through speech but through the vibration of the soul. When one spoke in this language, it was as though the very universe itself held its breath. The few who still remembered El's name, those who dared to practice the ancient rites, spoke it not aloud but in the silence between their thoughts, in the quiet spaces where time itself bends and twists. They knew the words, the symbols, the ancient syllables, but they dared not speak them, for to do so would be to invite madness. Why was this language forbidden? Why was it so dangerous? In truth, no one truly understands why. The answer lies somewhere, in the forgotten corners of time, locked away in the very places where El's power once thrived. But what is known is this: those who spoke his name in the sacred language were often driven to madness. Their minds, fragile and mortal, could not bear the weight of such knowledge. To utter the divine language was to risk losing one's grip on reality, to be consumed by the very power that created the world. There are whispers among those who still practice the ancient rites, those who have kept the sacred flame of El's knowledge burning, that speaking the divine tongue was never meant for mere mortals. It was a language that existed beyond the confines of mortal understanding. It transcended the barriers of time and space, linking the speaker to the very essence of the cosmos. When El's followers, those who had once known the sacred tongue, spoke of him, they did so in silence. Their words were unspoken, their prayers whispered only to the winds. The silence was their offering, the absence of sound a sacred act in itself. They knew that to speak aloud would be to invoke the wrath of those who had forgotten El, the gods who had risen in his place. The language itself was tied to El's very essence. It was not simply the means of communication, but the very foundation of his being. It was through this language that El created, and it was through this language that his power was sustained. But it was also through this language that his downfall began. For as the world turned away from El and turned toward new gods, the language of silence faded. No one dared to speak it aloud, and those who still remembered it were forced to conceal it, hiding their knowledge from the world. In time, the language was lost, consumed by the fear of its power, erased from the annals of history. But the echoes remain, haunting the minds of those who dare to listen. Some claim that the language still exists, hidden beneath the layers of time, that it waits for those brave enough to seek it out, to listen to the silent whispers that float through the cracks of the world. Others say it has been forgotten forever, its power lost to the winds of history. The truth, as always, lies somewhere in between. What remains of El's sacred language is not a thing of sound, but a feeling, a sensation that clings to the air, thick and heavy, the space between words, the pause between breaths, the silence. And in that silence, there is a presence that speaks without words, that lingers in the forgotten corners of the world, waiting for those who still dare to seek it. It is here, in this space of silence, that the true power of El is revealed. It is not in what is spoken, but in what is left unsaid. It is the language of creation itself, the language that birthed the gods, and it is the language that will outlast them all. But beware, for to listen too closely is to risk losing oneself in the silence. To hear the language of El is to be drawn into the void, to be consumed by the very power that shaped the universe. And so, the question remains, are you ready to hear it? Are you prepared to listen to what was never meant to be heard? The path you walk grows narrower, and with each step the air grows heavier, thick with the scent of ancient earth and stone. The world seems to fold in on itself as the edges of time blur. You are no longer in the realm of the living, but somewhere, far older, somewhere lost, somewhere forgotten. It is here, in the untouched wilderness, that El's temple once stood, a place hidden from the eyes of mortal men, sealed off by the very gods who sought to erase his presence from the world. The temple was not built with hands, not as humans build their structures with mortar and stone. No, El's temple was woven from the fabric of reality itself, a place so sacred that it existed on the edges of existence. It was a place where the veil between the divine and the mortal grew thin, where one could reach out and touch the very heart of creation itself. Yet it was not meant for mortal hands. You feel the weight of the earth beneath you, an earth that once knew the tread of divine feet, an earth that now lies buried, untouched. There are no ruins here, no remnants of the grandeur that once stood in this sacred space. There is only the faint echo of something lost, the whispered promise of something hidden deep in the earth. The temple, as the ancient texts describe, was not built in the image of gods, but in the image of nature itself. Its walls were not made of stone, but of the living wood of the earth's oldest trees, intertwined with vines that hummed with an energy unseen by mortal eyes. The floors were not paved with marble, but with the smooth stones of rivers long forgotten, their surfaces worn by the touch of hands that were no longer human. What happened inside El's temple remains shrouded in mystery, for the few who entered its hallowed halls never returned. Some say that within its walls El spoke with his followers, not in words but in visions, in dreams, in the very essence of being. The rituals performed within its sacred confines were not the rituals of gods or men, but of something beyond both, a worship so ancient, so profound, that it bent the very fabric of existence. It is said that those who entered the temple were offered the chance to see the world as El saw it, the past, the present, and the future, all at once. But the price was steep. To gaze upon the truth of the universe was to lose oneself, to be consumed by the weight of knowledge that was never meant to be understood. The ritual of the unseen flame was one such act performed within the temple. The unseen flame was not a flame of fire, but of light, pure, unearthly, a light that existed beyond the physical realm. It was a light that could burn away the veils of illusion, that could expose the true nature of the world, the gods, and everything in between. Yet to gaze upon this flame, to bask in its glow, was to risk losing oneself to the truth. For truth, when revealed in its purest form, is often unbearable. The unseen flame was said to burn in the heart of the temple, surrounded by sacred symbols, etched into the floor, a spiral, a labyrinth, a tree of life. These symbols were not mere decoration, but conduits to the divine power that El commanded. They were the keys to unlocking the deepest mysteries of existence, but they were also the locks that held the temple's secrets safe. Only those who understood the sacred language of silence, the language of El, could hope to access its full power. But El's temple was not just a place of worship. It was a place of trial. Those who sought to enter must first face their own darkness, confront the parts of themselves they had buried deep within. The temple did not simply reveal the world's truths. It revealed the deepest, most hidden truths of the soul. It laid bare the fears, the desires, and the flaws of those who entered, forcing them to confront their own inner demons before they could reach the divine. This was the great mystery of El's temple. It was both a place of enlightenment and a place of destruction. To enter was to be changed irrevocably. Some never left at all. their souls consumed by the temple's trials, lost to time and memory. Others left, but they were never the same. They were marked by the experience, changed in ways they could never fully understand. In the end, the temple was abandoned. The divine spark that once lit its halls was extinguished, and the doors once open to the faithful were sealed. It is said that the gods themselves closed the temple, fearing the knowledge it contained. They feared the power that El had created, the secrets that lay hidden in the heart of the wilderness. And so, the temple was lost, swallowed by the earth, its memory erased from the world. The unseen flame was extinguished, and the sacred rituals that took place within its walls faded into myth. But the memory of the temple lives on in the whispers of those who still seek the forgotten gods, those who long to unlock the secrets of the universe. You stand on the precipice, feeling the weight of the earth beneath your feet. The temple is gone, lost to time, but its essence remains lingering in the spaces between the trees in the silence of the wind. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the echoes of the rituals, the faint whispers of those who sought El's truth and paid the price for their curiosity. What happened to those who entered the temple? Did they truly glimpse the divine? Or were they lost, consumed by the very truth they sought? Perhaps you too are standing on the edge of that same abyss, drawn by the same unquenchable thirst for knowledge. But beware, some truths are too dangerous to know. Some flames are too powerful to touch, and the temple's flame is still waiting. The earth trembles beneath your feet, a faint rumbling vibration that travels through the soles of your shoes and into your very being. You cannot explain it, but something is stirring, something ancient. The air is thick with the remnants, a forgotten power, a power that once ruled the heavens but was cast aside, erased from history. El, the origin god, was not always a memory. He was not always the forgotten deity that lies buried beneath the weight of time. There was a time when El sat upon the throne of the gods, ruling the divine pantheon with an authority so absolute that it seemed unshakable. Yet even the mightiest of kings fall. Even the gods are not immune to betrayal. There was a moment, a singular, defining moment, when El was cast down from his place of power. It was not the result of a single violent act, nor was it the result of a cataclysmic battle between the divine forces. No. El's downfall came quietly. It came not with the clash of thunder or the shattering of mountains, but with the betrayal of his own children. El, the creator, the father of all things, was overthrown by the very beings who had been born from his own essence. His children, beings of immense power, born from his very soul, grew restless under his reign. They had tasted the sweetness of creation and longed for more. They desired the dominion that El alone held, the power to shape the world as they saw fit. In the beginning, El's rule was absolute. His children in their purest form respected his authority. But as the ages passed, a silent discontent grew among them. They questioned his methods, they questioned his wisdom, and in the shadows, they whispered to one another, plotting the downfall of their father. They knew the power of the throne, and they believed they were worthy of it. The gods, in their jealousy and ambition, grew restless. They could not bear the thought of being subordinate to El any longer. And so they plotted. The eldest son, some say it was Baal, others say it was Yahweh, though the records are unclear, led the rebellion. He was the first to speak the unthinkable, the first to question El's rule aloud. And when he did, his words became a spark, igniting the flames of dissent among the divine siblings. Slowly, the other gods fell into line, drawn by the promise of power, by the desire to stand equal to their father. But El did not respond in anger. He did not lash out in rage or fury, as one might expect of a god of his stature. Instead, he withdrew into silence. He watched as his children turned against him, saw them stir in the shadows, plotting in their ambition. And in that silence, the world began to shift. For El, the ruler of the heavens, had never ruled through force. His was the quiet, unyielding power of creation itself. He had never needed to impose his will upon others. His divine authority had been a natural thing, a power that flowed effortlessly through the cosmos. But now his children had grown impatient. They wanted to seize that power for themselves. The great tragedy of El's banishment was not that he was overthrown by his own children, but that he allowed it. He did not fight. He did not strike down his betrayers or call upon the wrath of the heavens. Instead, he allowed the rebellion to unfold, resigned to the inevitable. The gods, his children, turned on him, and without a word, El withdrew from their sight. The heavens darkened as El's presence slowly faded from the divine realm. His power, once all-encompassing, began to recede. His name was erased from the sacred texts, his temples fell into ruin, and his children, the gods who had once served him, took their places as rulers of the heavens. What followed was a slow, quiet exile. El's absence was not marked by fire or bloodshed. No, the divine world simply moved on. The gods who had once loved him, who had once honored him, turned their faces away. They crowned themselves in his stead, claiming dominion over the realms he had once held. And El was forgotten. His throne, empty. His name, lost. His essence, cast aside. And so El, the great origin god, the father of all, was cast into exile, not by an external enemy, but by those who had been born of him, those whom he had created in his image. His divine reign was dissolved, not by the hands of those who were once beneath him, but by the hands of his own kin. It was a quiet banishment, one that left no scars, no wounds. But it was the most painful of all. The gods had turned their backs on their father, and in doing so, they had erased him from the heavens. There are few who remember El's name now, fewer still who know of his banishment, of the silent exile that was forced upon him by his own children. And yet, his absence is felt still. In the stillness of the night, in the quiet moments between breaths, one might hear the whisper of El's forgotten name. Why, you might ask, was El cast down? Was it truly ambition that led his children to betray him? Or was there something more, something darker, that lay at the heart of their rebellion? Perhaps in the end it was not just power that they sought. Perhaps they sought something else altogether, something more terrible than they could ever have imagined. But that is a question for another time. For now, El remains a forgotten god, exiled in silence, a king whose throne lies empty, waiting to be reclaimed or forever abandoned. The air here is thick with an ancient stillness, as though the very fabric of the world holds its breath. You stand at the edge of a memory, a moment suspended in time, where the boundaries between the mortal and divine blur into something intangible. The flame you seek is not like any flame you know. It is not born of fire, but of light itself. A light that flickers in the corners of forgotten temples and burns with a power that defies understanding. This is the unseen flame. The unseen flame was not a flame that could be touched, nor a flame that could be seen with the eyes. It was a flame of the spirit, a flame that existed in the spaces between the physical world and the divine. The ancient rituals performed before it were not ones that could be understood by those bound to flesh and bone. They were acts of transcendence, moments when the soul shed its mortal shackles and reached for the very core of the cosmos. To speak of the unseen flame is to speak of a power that transcends all earthly comprehension. It was the light that illuminated the Temple of El, the sacred place where truth itself was revealed. The rituals that took place before this flame were not mere acts of worship, but acts of communion. Communion with the divine, communion with the very essence of creation. But what was the purpose of this flame? Why was it so dangerous, so forbidden? The answer lies in the nature of the ritual itself. The unseen flame was not merely an object of devotion. It was a conduit to divine knowledge, to the hidden truths of the universe. To gaze upon it, even in its intangible form, was to see the world as it truly was, not through the veil of mortal perception, but through the eyes of the gods themselves. To witness the unseen flame was to bear witness to the very fabric of reality unraveling. The flame revealed all, the past, the present, and the future, as one. It exposed the hidden patterns that governed the universe, the secret forces that shaped the lives of gods and men alike. It was a revelation so profound, so overwhelming, that few could survive the experience. Those who approached the unseen flame were not simply seeking knowledge. They were seeking to transcend their own limitations, to break free from the chains of mortality and step into the realm of the divine. The ritual was one of ultimate sacrifice. To look upon the flame was to risk losing oneself entirely, to be consumed by the very truth it revealed. And yet, despite the risks, there were those who sought the flame. They came to El's temple, drawn by the promise of divine insight, by the allure of the knowledge that lay beyond the veil. Some came in search of power, hoping that the flame would grant them the ability to reshape the world to their will. Others came in search of understanding, hoping that by gazing upon the flame they might come to know the deepest mysteries of existence. But there was a price to be paid for such knowledge. To commune with the unseen flame was to open oneself to the full weight of the universe. It was to strip away the illusion of separation between the self and the cosmos, to see the interconnectedness of all things. And in doing so, it shattered the barriers between the mortal and divine, leaving the initiate vulnerable to the vastness of the cosmos. Few who gazed upon the unseen flame ever returned unchanged. Some, like the ancient prophets of El's time, were consumed by the experience. Their minds shattered under the weight of the truth they had seen, and they were lost to the madness that followed. Others were irrevocably altered, their perceptions of the world forever altered by the knowledge they had received. They became like gods themselves, walking the earth with a vision that few could comprehend, their words falling upon mortal ears like the whispered winds of a forgotten age. But the most dangerous consequence of all was that some who looked upon the unseen flame did not return at all. Their bodies were found, yes, but their souls were gone, scattered across the vast expanse of the universe. They had been consumed by the flame, absorbed into the very fabric of creation, never to be seen again. And so the unseen flame became both a beacon and a warning. A beacon of divine knowledge, yes, but also a warning of the dangers that awaited those who sought to peer too deeply into the mysteries of the universe. The gods, knowing the destructive power of this flame, sealed the temple. They hid the knowledge of the flame away, locking it behind layers of time and silence. El, in his quiet wisdom, understood the dangers of the flame. He knew that its power could not be wielded by mortals, nor could it be contained by the gods. It was a force beyond their understanding, a force that could break the very fabric of the universe if misused. And so, the unseen flame was extinguished, not by fire, but by silence. It was sealed away, hidden beneath the earth, its true nature lost to time. Those who once sought its light now wander the earth as shadows, their minds lost to the knowledge they sought to possess. But what of those who still seek the flame? Those who long to glimpse the truth of the universe, to see the world as the gods see it? Do they understand the price they must pay? For the flame still waits. It waits in the silence of forgotten temples, in the hidden places where time itself bends. And if you listen closely enough, you might hear the faintest whisper, the promise of knowledge, the call of the divine, waiting for someone brave or foolish enough to seek it. But beware. The flame is not kind. It does not give freely. To seek it is to risk losing everything, and to gaze upon it is to risk becoming part of the universe itself. You feel the ground tremble beneath you, as if the very fabric of reality is shifting, moving in response to the unspoken words that linger in the air. The name you dare not speak, El, resonates in the silence, a whisper carried by the wind, but never heard aloud. Yet there is more to this story than a mere name, and the truth buried deep in the folds of history is darker than you can imagine. The heresy of the three names is one of the most forbidden and mysterious aspects of El's legacy. It is said that long before El was cast aside by his children, there was a ritual, a divine secret known only to the inner circle of the gods. This secret involved not one name, but three. Three names that, when spoken together, could summon forth an unimaginable power. the power to reshape the very fabric of the universe itself. The first of the three names was El's true name, a name known only to the gods and hidden from the mortal world. This name was the key to the very heart of creation, the word that could bind the cosmos together. But it was not meant to be spoken. To utter it was to invoke the fullness of the divine, to open the gates between the mortal and the eternal. The second name, however, is shrouded in mystery. It is said that this name was given to El by a force older than even the gods, an entity that existed long before time itself began to count its days. This name, once uttered, was said to bring great knowledge but also great madness. It was a name that could reveal the deepest secrets of the universe, but only to those who were prepared to bear the weight of that knowledge. And the third name, the most forbidden of all, was the name of El's true successor, the one who would come after him. This name was hidden, buried deep within the sacred scrolls of the gods, locked away and sealed by those who feared its power. For this name carried with it the potential to unmake the world, to destroy everything El had created. To speak it would be to undo creation itself, to bring about the end of the divine order. Together, these three names held the key to unimaginable power, but their power was not to be wielded lightly. The gods themselves feared the consequences of uttering these names, for they knew that to speak them was to risk unraveling the very fabric of existence, and so they were hidden, locked away in the deepest recesses of the divine realm, never to be spoken aloud again. Yet, as with all forbidden knowledge, the temptation to unlock the truth was too great for some to resist. There were those who believed themselves worthy of such power, who sought to uncover the three names. They believed that by speaking these names, they could gain dominion over the cosmos itself. They believed that they could replace El as the supreme god, that they could ascend to a level of divinity that no mortal or god had ever reached. But those who sought the three names did not understand the consequences of their actions. The power of these names was too great for any being, divine or mortal, to comprehend. And when the names were spoken, the universe trembled. The laws of reality themselves began to bend and twist, as if the very fabric of existence was being torn apart. The gods themselves recoiled in fear, for they knew that once the names were spoken, there could be no turning back. It is said that those who sought the three names were consumed by the very power they sought to wield. Their minds shattered under the weight of the knowledge they had gained, and they were lost to madness. Some were consumed by the void, their souls lost to the darkness between worlds. Others became something other. They were neither gods nor mortals, but something in between, a twisted reflection of what they once were, driven by the knowledge they had unlocked. The three names were sealed away once more, locked behind layers of divine protection, their power hidden from the world. The gods who had once sought them now understood the danger they posed. They had sought the names out of ambition, but they had learned that some truths are too dangerous to be known. And so the names were erased from history, forgotten by all but a few who still whispered about them in secret, hidden from the world. But the question remains. What would happen if the three names were spoken once more? What would happen if they were called forth again, after all these millennia of silence? Could El's return be possible? Could the forgotten god reclaim his throne? And what of the successor's name? Is the power of creation and destruction truly gone, or does it linger, waiting for those brave, or foolish, enough to seek it out? You do not know the answers to these questions, but you feel them stir deep within you, like a whisper that beckons from the corners of your mind. You feel the weight of the names in the air, their presence hanging just beyond your reach. The three names are forgotten, yes, but they are not gone. They remain, hidden in the silence, waiting for someone to unlock the truth. And you are listening. The winds are still, the air thick with the remnants of a broken bond, as though the very heavens mourn the rupture that occurred long ago. You walk deeper into the forgotten corridors of time, and with each step, the world grows darker, the shadows longer. The gods, those who once stood as a family united by blood and purpose, have fallen into a tragic rift, torn apart by jealousy, ambition, and the slow erosion of trust. It was not always this way. In the beginning, the divine family stood as one. El, the Father, held the celestial throne, and his children, those born from his essence, worshipped him, revered him. Together they shaped the world. Together they held dominion over the heavens and earth. There was peace, there was unity, for the gods knew their place in the divine order. El, as the patriarch, governed with quiet wisdom, his power tempered by the love of his children, and in return, they thrived under his rule. But power, like all things in the cosmos, is fragile. It is easily tainted, corrupted by the desires of those who crave more. The divine family, once united, began to fracture. The children of El, gods of great power, looked upon their father's throne and felt the stirrings of something darker. It was not love that motivated them, it was ambition. They coveted the power that El held, the dominion over all things. And so, as time passed, whispers began to echo through the halls of the divine realm. First came the eldest son. Some say it was Baal, a god of storms and power, his heart filled with the fire of rebellion. Others say it was Yahweh, a god of discipline and justice, whose eyes were filled with a vision for a new order. Whomever it was, the seeds of discord were planted in his heart, and they spread like wildfire among the other gods. El's rule, once steady and sure, now seemed oppressive to his children. They began to question their father's authority, to question the very foundations of the divine order. As the whispers grew louder, a great schism formed between El and his children. The unity that once bound them together was slowly eroded by betrayal. The gods no longer saw themselves as a family, but as rivals, each one vying for power, each one seeking to take the throne for themselves. The divine family fractured into factions, each god turning against the other in a struggle for supremacy. Baal sought to claim the heavens for himself, his storms and tempests tearing through the sky as a symbol of his ambition. Yahweh, too, grew restless, his vision for a new order clashing with El's established rule. Each god, once loyal to their father, now saw him as an obstacle to their own desires. And so, the betrayal began. The children of El turned on him, not in open defiance, but in the quiet, subtle ways that only gods could manage. They spoke behind his back, undermined his authority, sowed doubt among the other gods. They fed off each other's ambition, stoking the flames of rebellion until it could no longer be contained. El, for all his power, did not strike down his children. He did not call upon his wrath or summon the forces of creation to destroy them. No. Instead, he withdrew. He watched as his children fought amongst themselves, saw the slow, painful unraveling of the divine family he had created. He knew what was coming, and he allowed it to happen. The greatest betrayal of all came not from an enemy, not from a rival god, but from his own blood. El's children, once his greatest pride, cast him aside. They turned their backs on him and declared themselves sovereign. The gods no longer saw him as their father. They saw him as a relic of a bygone age, a figurehead whose time had passed. It was a betrayal of the highest order, a betrayal that struck at the very heart of the divine family. And El, the father, the creator, was left to watch in silence as his children cast him into exile. What drove them to such an act? Was it pure ambition? Or was there something deeper, something more insidious at work? Was El's rule too soft, too gentle? Did his children believe that their own power could surpass his? Or was it simply the inevitable outcome of a family, bound by power rather than love? The truth remains elusive, locked away behind the veils of time, but the consequence of that betrayal is clear. The divine family was shattered, never to be whole again. El, the once mighty god, was cast into exile, his name erased from the heavens, his essence lost to time. And his children, who had turned against him, now ruled the divine realms, their rivalry shaping the world in ways that would never have been possible under El's reign. It is said that even the gods who betrayed El felt the weight of their actions. In the quiet moments when the chaos of their ambition subsided, they could feel the absence of their father. They could feel the rupture in the divine order, the wound that they had inflicted upon the cosmos itself. But by then, it was too late. The damage had been done, and so the gods continued their reign, each one striving for greater power, each one locked in their own battle for supremacy. But in the silence, in the space between their ambitions, the memory of El lingered, a shadow in the corners of the divine realm, a reminder of what was lost. The betrayal of the divine family is a tragedy that echoes through the ages, a story of power and loss, of ambition and regret. It is a reminder that even gods can fall, that even the most sacred bonds can be broken, and yet El remains. His name may be lost, his power may be forgotten, but his memory, his essence, lingers in the very fabric of the world. Perhaps in time. His children will remember him, and perhaps they will come to understand the price of their betrayal. But for now, El's silence speaks louder than any god's ambition. You feel the subtle shift in the air, like a veil being lifted but not entirely removed. A fracture has occurred, one that cannot be mended. It is as if the very foundation of the universe trembles at the remembrance of an ancient promise, one made but long forgotten. A covenant, once sacred, now broken. A divine agreement between El and the cosmos itself, severed by the ambition of those who would seek to replace him. The covenant, you see, was not a mere promise. It was the very glue that held the fabric of the heavens together. It was a pact, a divine bond forged in the primordial fires of creation. It was El's word to the world, a commitment to maintain balance and order, to preserve harmony between the divine and the mortal realms. But when El's children rebelled, when they sought to overthrow him and claim the divine throne for themselves, the covenant was shattered. The promise he had made to the universe, to the very essence of creation, was broken in an act of betrayal. And as with all broken promises, the repercussions were far-reaching. This was not a simple matter of divine politics or the whims of gods, vying for power. No, the breaking of the covenant reverberated through the very fabric of existence. The universe itself felt the loss. For the covenant was more than a pact between gods. It was a divine law that governed all things. It was the very foundation of creation, the invisible force that kept the balance between light and darkness, between life and death. When the gods, El's own children, broke that sacred agreement, they did not just break their bond with their father. They broke the fabric of reality itself. The balance that El had maintained so carefully began to unravel. The universe, once so ordered and harmonious, now trembled under the weight of this cosmic fracture. And what of the gods themselves? What of those who had betrayed their father and shattered the covenant? They too felt the weight of their actions. The consequences of breaking the divine law were not immediate, but they were inevitable. As time passed, the gods began to change. They grew restless, their powers warped by the very act of their rebellion. The very essence of their being was twisted, and they were no longer the gods they had once been. The rebellion against El, the breaking of the covenant, left scars upon the divine that could never be healed. The gods who had once been unified were now divided, each one driven by their own desires, each one seeking to fill the void left by El's exile. The balance they once held so carefully was lost, and in its place there was only conflict, ambition, and the hollow echoes of what had once been. But what was this covenant, and why was it so important? The answer lies in the very nature of El's creation. El had not simply shaped the heavens and the earth. He had forged them from the very fabric of existence itself. His power was not just the power of a god, but the power of creation itself. El had shaped the world to be a place of balance, a place where light and dark, life and death, chaos and order existed in perfect harmony. His covenant was not merely a promise, it was a divine law, a cosmic agreement that ensured the continued existence of the world. And when El's children broke that law, they did not just break their father's heart. They broke the very fabric of reality. Now the world is not what it once was. The balance that El had carefully crafted has been replaced by chaos. The gods once united are now divided, each one struggling for power, each one seeking to impose. their will upon the world. The very essence of creation, once so pure and ordered, has become corrupted, twisted by the rebellion of the gods. You cannot help but wonder, what is the true cost of this betrayal? What have the gods lost in their pursuit of power? And what has been lost to the world in the wake of the covenant's shattering? Perhaps the answer lies not in the gods themselves, but in the world they have left behind. The earth trembles, the skies darken, and the echoes of El's silence reverberate through the ages. For as much as the gods have sought to replace him, there is something that they cannot escape: the fact that they are the ones who broke the covenant. They are the ones who brought about the collapse of the world they had once ruled, and now the consequences of their actions are unfolding. The universe, it seems, is no longer what it was. The divine order has been upended, and the world is left to reel from the consequences of the gods' betrayal. But perhaps, just perhaps, there is hope. Perhaps the broken covenant can be restored, if only the right hands can unlock the truth. Yet the question remains: who, if anyone, can restore what was lost? Who can mend the fabric of reality now frayed and torn? You know, deep within you, that the answer to this question lies not in the hands of the gods, but in the hands of those who dare to seek the truth, those who understand the weight of the covenant, those who are willing to pay the price of restoring balance. The question now is, are you one of them? For the answer is not one that can be given easily. The journey ahead is long, and the price for seeking the truth is steep. But the broken covenant calls to you, as it has called to others before you. Will you answer its call? Or will you, too, turn away? Word count, 101. The air grows heavy around you, thick with the whispers of ages past, the very echoes of forgotten power reverberating through the spaces between worlds. You feel it, a subtle, lingering shift, a tremor that passes through your very soul. You are standing at the threshold of something ancient, something that should never have been tampered with. This is the boundary, the point at which creation itself was bent, altered by the hands of those who did not understand the forces they sought to control. The gods, in their ambition, sought to change the very structure of existence. They sought to alter the sacred circle, the divine boundary that defined the balance between life and death, order and chaos. This was not a mere act of rebellion. It was an act of hubris, an attempt to reshape the cosmos itself, to impose their will upon the universe in a way that had never been done before. The circle, ancient and unbroken, was the foundation of the divine order. It was the boundary that separated the gods from the mortal realm, the physical from the spiritual, the known from the unknown. It was a symbol of balance, of harmony, of the divine forces that kept the world in equilibrium. The gods had long respected the circle, for they knew that to alter it would be to risk unraveling the very fabric of existence. But power corrupts, and those who sought more could not resist the temptation to reshape the divine circle. In their arrogance, they believed they could control its force, bend it to their will. They thought they could alter the flow of time, change the very structure of the heavens, and make themselves the masters of all that was. And so, the unholy alteration began. It is said that the ritual was conducted in secret, away from the eyes of the other gods. Those who dared to undertake it were driven by ambition, by a hunger for more power than the world could contain. They believed that by breaking the circle they could access new realms of existence, realms that had once been beyond the reach of even the gods. They sought to pierce the veil between worlds, to open doors that had long been sealed shut. The alteration itself was not a simple act of will. It required the invocation of ancient forbidden forces, ones that had long been locked away by El and his forebears. It required the use of symbols, complex, sacred, and deeply powerful, that were known only to the highest gods. These symbols, when spoken aloud, could alter the very essence of existence, changing the laws that govern the cosmos. The gods who performed this ritual did not understand what they were unleashing. They did not understand the forces they were tampering with. They thought they could control it, that they could alter the circle without consequence. But the circle was not meant to be altered. It was not meant to be broken, and so they broke it. The ritual, performed in the deepest sanctums of the divine realm, shattered the circle's integrity. It tore through the very fabric of reality, creating rifts in the divine order that could never be repaired. The gods, in their greed, tore apart the walls that separated their world from the mortal realm, the physical from the spiritual, and in doing so, they unleashed chaos upon the world. The consequences were immediate. The balance that El had so carefully crafted was shattered. The gods, once united, now found themselves at odds with each other, their powers twisted and warped by the forces they had unleashed. The laws of time and space were no longer fixed. The mortal world, too, was affected, its boundaries weakened, its stability compromised. The veil between life and death grew thin, and those who died began to wander in the liminal spaces between worlds. Ghosts, spirits, and beings of shadow began to seep into the mortal realm, their presence a constant reminder of the gods' hubris. But the gods, even in their arrogance, could not undo what they had done. The alteration of the sacred circle was irreversible. Once broken, it could never be restored to its original state. The damage had been done, the divine order had been fractured, and the repercussions of that fracture rippled through the universe, through the very core of existence. In the wake of the ritual, the gods turned on one another. The divisions between them grew wider, the alliances they had once shared now broken. They blamed one another for the catastrophe, each god seeking to deflect the responsibility, each god trying to claim the power that the circle's alteration had unleashed. The divine realm descended into chaos, as gods who had once ruled together now fought amongst themselves, each one seeking to claim dominion over the remnants of the shattered cosmos. El's silence echoed louder than ever before, for it was in his absence that the gods had strayed from their path. It was his wisdom, his careful balance that had kept them in check. Without him, they had succumbed to their own ambitions, and now they were paying the price. The alteration of the sacred circle was not simply an act of rebellion, it was an act of self-destruction. The gods, in their greed and desire for more, had undone the very structure that had held the universe together. They had torn apart the divine order and replaced it with chaos, an unrelenting force that would forever haunt the realms. Now the gods are no longer the rulers they once were. Their power is diminished, their realms in disarray. The mortal world, too, feels the effects of their actions. The veil between life and death is thinner than ever before, and the balance that once held the universe in harmony has been replaced by an endless struggle for power and dominance. The unholy alteration of the sacred circle was the point of no return. The gods may continue to rule, but their reign is a hollow one. The balance has been shattered, and the world will never be the same. As you stand at the edge of this fractured world, you cannot help but wonder, is there any hope for restoration? Can the sacred circle ever be mended? Or is this the new order, the world of chaos where the gods are no longer the arbiters of fate, but the victims of their own ambition? The winds howl around you, carrying with them the echoes of ancient voices. It is as if the very air itself remembers the divine decree, a judgment passed down in silence, the weight of which still hangs over the realms. You feel it, like a pressing weight, heavy upon your chest as though the entire universe holds its breath, waiting for something that will never come. A decision made long ago, one that was never spoken aloud but has reverberated through eternity. It was not Eli who passed this judgment. No, the gods themselves made the decree. In their arrogance, they had broken the sacred circle, shattered the divine balance, and now they were to pay the price. But the price was not one paid in blood or fire. No, this was a punishment that could not be seen, one that was whispered into the corners of existence, hidden from the mortal eye. The decree of silent judgment was not a loud, chaotic event. It was not marked by cataclysm or destruction. Instead, it was a quiet sentence, a decision that slipped into the cracks of the divine realm like a shadow. It was a decree that would go unnoticed by many, even by those who had caused the fracture in the first place. For it was not a punishment to be felt immediately, but one that would unfold over time. You see, the gods had turned away from their father, El, in their quest for power. They had broken the divine covenant, and in doing so, they had cast themselves into a world of endless strife. But this was not their punishment, not immediately. The true judgment was something far more insidious, far more subtle. The gods were condemned to eternal silence. This silence was not the silence of peace or rest. It was a silence that stripped away their essence, a silence that eroded their divinity piece by piece. The gods, in their endless striving for power, had become prisoners of their own ambitions. They had sought to transcend the limits of their existence, to rise above the boundaries that had once kept them in check. But in doing so, they had undone the very foundation of their power. The decree of silent judgment was a curse that robbed the gods of their ability to communicate, to truly connect with each other or with the mortal realm. They could no longer speak as they once did, no longer call upon their divine voices to command the forces of the universe. Their power was diminished, and their influence waned. The gods, once so full of life and purpose, now drifted through existence, cut off from one another, unable to reach out to the world they had once ruled. The silence that fell upon the gods was not a passive thing. It was an active force, one that gnawed at their very being. They could still act, still move through the realms, but they could not communicate with each other in the way they once did. The divine realm, once a place of vibrant energy and interaction, became a vast empty space, filled only with the distant echoes of what had been. This silence, this estrangement, was the true punishment. The gods were not struck down in their prime, nor were they cast into oblivion. No, they were left to exist in a state of unfulfilled potential, their powers diminished and their ability to influence the world removed. They were left to wander the realms, disconnected from one another, a family torn apart by ambition and betrayal, unable to speak, to communicate, to restore what had been lost. The gods who had once ruled the heavens now found themselves bound by an unspoken law. Their fate was not decided in a moment of divine wrath, but in a quiet, almost invisible judgment. They were condemned not to destruction, but to isolation. But what does this mean for the mortal realm? You can feel the echoes of the gods' silent punishment reverberate through the very fabric of existence. The world itself feels fractured, as if the balance El once maintained has been irrevocably disturbed. The veil between the divine and the mortal is thinner than ever, and the gods, once so powerful, now seem distant, unreachable. Their silence is a curse upon both gods and mortals alike. The gods, now unable to speak to the world they once shaped, cannot guide or influence the course of human affairs. The mortal realm, left to fend for itself, is adrift in a sea of uncertainty. And the balance that El had so carefully crafted, the divine order that had once kept the world in harmony, is now but a distant memory. The decree of silent judgment is a lesson, though one that may never be fully understood. It is a reminder that even gods, with all their power and ambition, cannot escape the consequences of their actions. The gods, in their quest for more, have been left with nothing but silence. And now, as you stand at the edge of the world, you feel the weight of their silence pressing upon you. The gods may no longer speak, but their actions, their choices, still ripple through the world. The punishment of silence has not erased their presence, but it has changed it, rendered it distant and cold. Perhaps in time, the gods will learn to communicate again. Perhaps they will find a way to break the silence that binds them. But for now they remain, trapped in their own isolation, unable to reach out to the world they once shaped. The question remains, will they ever regain the power they once had? Or is this the final judgment, one that cannot be undone? The silence lingers, and you cannot help but wonder if it is not just the gods who are silent, but the entire universe holding its breath, waiting for something that may never come. There are moments in time when the very essence of existence bends, twists, and breaks, when the struggles of the divine are reflected in the shifting patterns of the mortal world. You stand at the precipice of such a moment, peering into the swirling shadows of forgotten battles. Battles fought not with swords or shields, but with the very forces that shape the cosmos itself. The gods have always been at war, though the wars they fought were not of blood and steel. These were battles fought on a scale that the mortal world could scarcely comprehend. Wars that shaped the very foundation of the universe. These wars were fought in the realms of thought, of power, of influence. The gods did not clash in physical form. Instead, they waged war upon one another with the force of their will, bending reality itself to their desires. El, in his time, was no stranger to war. Though he was often depicted as a peaceful god, one who ruled with quiet wisdom and compassion, he was also a warrior in his own right. His reign was not without its struggles, for there were always those who sought to challenge him, to claim the power he held. But El did not fight the wars of the gods as others did. He did not raise armies or wield weapons. Instead, El fought, with patience, with wisdom, and with a quiet resolve that his enemies could not match. But there were others, gods who were not content to remain in the shadows of El's reign. These were the gods who sought to challenge him, to claim the power he held. These were the gods who saw El's wisdom as weakness, his patience as indecisiveness. They were the gods who waged war not to preserve order but to seize control. And so the Forgotten Wars began. The first of these wars was fought long before El's exile, long before his name was cast into silence. It was a war between El and those gods who sought to dethrone him, to break the divine order he had established. The details of this war are lost to history, buried in the forgotten corners of time, but its effects are still felt in the fabric of the universe. The very laws of reality were altered in this war, as the gods battled not only for power, but for the right to shape the universe as they saw fit. The war was not a singular event, but a series of conflicts, battles fought in the deepest recesses of existence. These were wars of creation and destruction, of divine power and mortal influence. The gods clashed, their will manifesting in ways that mortal eyes could not perceive. Entire realms were born and destroyed in the blink of an eye, as the gods fought to impose their will upon the universe. El, for all his wisdom, could not escape the tide of rebellion. The gods who had once worshipped him, who had once followed him without question, turned against him. They saw in him a god who was too slow, too careful, too content with the balance he had created. They sought more power, more dominion over the universe, and in their ambition, they waged war against their father. This war, though forgotten by most, still echoes through the halls of time. The remnants of the divine conflict can still be seen in the rifts that exist between the gods, in the divisions that have marked the Pantheon since El's exile. The wars of the gods did not end with El's fall. They continue, in subtle ways, as the gods who once betrayed him now struggle to fill the void he left behind. But the true cost of these wars, the true tragedy of the forgotten wars of the gods, is not the blood spilled or the realms destroyed. The true cost is the loss of what El represented, the quiet, steady hand that guided the universe. The gods, who fought these wars, sought to replace El, to take his place as the ruler of all things, but in doing so they destroyed the balance he had created. They shattered the unity that once held the heavens and earth together. The gods, in their endless struggle for power, lost something essential. They lost the understanding of the harmony that El had once embodied, the knowledge that power alone was not enough to rule the universe. The wars of the gods were not simply battles for supremacy. They were battles for the soul of existence itself. Now, as you stand on the edge of this cosmic conflict, you cannot help but feel the weight of what was lost. The gods who waged these wars may have won their battles, but they lost something far greater in the process. They lost the very essence of creation, the balance that El had so carefully crafted. You look around and the world seems still, as though it is holding its breath, waiting for something that may never come. The gods who fought these wars may still exist, but they are no longer the beings they once were. They are fractured, broken by their own ambition. And the world, once shaped by their will, now exists in a state of quiet chaos. The forgotten wars of the gods are not simply battles of the past. They are the ongoing struggle for balance, for harmony, for the very soul of existence. And as you stand here, on the precipice of what was and what is, you feel the weight of that struggle pressing upon you. The gods may be silent, their battles fought in shadows, but their influence is still felt. The wars they waged continue to shape the world, and perhaps in some small way they always will. What is the cost of these forgotten wars? Perhaps it is something that cannot be measured, something that lies beyond the reach of even the gods themselves. But you cannot ignore the truth. The divine conflict has not ended. It is still unfolding, in ways unseen, in places untold. And you too may one day find yourself caught in its wake. You stand before an ancient altar, untouched by time yet heavy with the weight of history. The air around you is thick with the scent of forgotten parchment and ink, as though the very dust of the past rises to meet you. It is here, in this sacred space, that the lost scroll of the forgotten gods is said to rest, a relic so ancient, so powerful, that its very existence was wiped from the memory of the world. The scroll is said to contain the true history of El and his pantheon, the record of the gods' rise and fall, their betrayals and their secrets. It was written in a language that few could understand, a language older than time itself, inscribed with symbols and incantations that carried with them the power to shape reality. The scroll was not meant for mortal eyes, for to read it was to be drawn into the very fabric of the divine conflict. It was not a simple history. It was a blueprint for the universe itself, a record of creation, destruction, and everything in between. But the scroll was lost, sealed away by the gods who feared its power. They understood what it contained, and they knew that to allow it to fall into the wrong hands would be to unleash forces that no god, mortal, or being could control. The scroll was buried in the deepest recesses of the divine realm, hidden away, its knowledge locked behind layers of time and secrecy. The question remains, why was the scroll lost? Why was it hidden from the world? The truth is that the scroll contained more than the history of El and his children. It contained something far more dangerous, a key to unlocking the full potential of the gods. The scroll was said to hold the names of other gods, gods who had been erased from history, their existence forgotten, their power buried. El was not the only deity to have ruled the heavens. There were others, gods who were lost, gods who were erased, and gods who were never meant to be remembered. These gods were not part of the divine pantheon that El had ruled. They were older, more primal, their influence stretching back to the earliest days of creation. They were the forgotten gods, the ones who had been cast aside by El and his children, their names erased from history. The scroll contained their names, their rituals, and the terrible power they had once wielded. And so, the gods sealed it away, hiding it from the world. They knew that if the scroll were ever found, the forgotten gods would rise again, and with them a new war would begin, a war that would tear apart the very fabric of reality. The gods feared this, and so they buried the scroll, sealed it in a place where no mortal could reach it. But what if the scroll were to be found? What if its power were to be unlocked once more? The thought sends a chill down your spine. To seek the scroll is to seek the very foundation of the divine. To read, it is to unlock the secrets of the cosmos, to uncover the hidden truths of the gods and their forgotten realms. But it is also to risk everything, to risk unleashing the power of the forgotten gods, to risk bringing about the destruction of all that has been created. You feel a strange pull, a desire to uncover the scroll's secrets, to peer into the forbidden knowledge it contains. But as you stand on the precipice of this discovery, you are filled with doubt. Are you prepared to bear the weight of this knowledge? Are you ready to face the consequences of bringing the forgotten gods back into the world? The lost scroll is not just a relic of the past. It is a weapon, a tool that could reshape the future. Its power is beyond comprehension, beyond mortal understanding. And yet you feel it, this undeniable pull to uncover the truth. But be warned, some knowledge is not meant to be known. Some truths are too dangerous to be uncovered. The scroll holds the key to the rise of the forgotten gods, and with it comes the potential for a new age of divine conflict. The gods who once ruled the heavens are no more, but the echoes of their power linger, waiting to be unleashed. Will you seek the scroll? Will you delve into the forgotten corners of history to uncover the truth, no matter the cost? Or will you turn away, leaving the secrets of the gods buried where they belong? The choice is yours, but remember this. Once the scroll is opened, once its secrets are revealed, there can be no turning back. The gods of old will awaken, and with them, the world will change in ways you cannot yet fathom. The lost scroll waits, its power untouched, its knowledge locked away. Will you be the one to find it, to unlock the forgotten gods from their slumber? Or will you let their secrets remain buried in the silence of the ages? You stand in the quiet shadow of something far older than you, something that hums with a forgotten energy, a pulse that echoes through the very air around you. The whispers are growing louder now, more insistent, as though the veil between the realms of the divine and the mortal is thinning. A secret lingers here, suspended in time, a secret that has the power to shatter everything you thought you knew. It is the secret of the divine return. The gods, those ancient beings who once shaped the world and ruled over the heavens, are no longer what they once were. El, the origin god, has been cast aside. His name, once revered, is now lost to time, his influence forgotten by all but the most devoted of his followers. His children, who once stood beside him in the divine pantheon, have fractured, each seeking their own power, their own dominion over the realms they once ruled together. And yet, there are whispers, old whispers that speak of a return, of a time when the gods would reclaim what they lost, when the divine would rise once more and reshape the world in their image. But is this truly possible? Can the gods return after all they have lost? Can El and his children reclaim their places among the stars, or have they fallen beyond the reach of even their own power? There are those who believe in the divine return, those who cling to the hope that the gods will rise again. They speak of a prophecy, one that has been passed down through the ages, though its meaning has been obscured by time. The prophecy tells of a time when the world will grow dark, when the balance of the universe will falter, and when the gods will return to restore that balance. But the truth is more complicated, more dangerous than simple hope. The divine return is not simply a matter of will. It is not a straightforward path that leads from the realm of silence to the realm of power. No, the return of the gods requires something more, a sacrifice, a price that must be paid, one that cannot be avoided. The gods themselves must find a way to break the silence that binds them, to restore their communication, their power, and their unity, and that is where the true danger lies. The gods are not what they once were. They have been changed by the passage of time, by their rebellion, by their exile. They are fractured, broken, their power diminished. To restore the divine pantheon is to risk the very fabric of reality itself. For the gods are not simply rulers of the heavens. They are the very forces that shape existence. To bring them back is to bring about the possibility of a new era, one that could unravel the world as you know it. The divine return is not something that can be controlled. It is not a fate that can be orchestrated. It is a force that will unfold, in its own time, on its own terms, and the consequences of that return will be felt by all who inhabit the world, gods and mortals alike. But what if the gods do return? What if El, the ancient god of creation, the father of all, rises once more to reclaim the throne that was stolen from him? What if his children, those who once turned against him, come together again, not as rivals, but as a united force of divine power? Would this be a blessing, as some hope? Or would it be a curse, a reckoning for the world that has lived without the gods for so long? The secret of the divine return is one that cannot be fully understood. Not yet. It is a mystery, wrapped in time, a force that lingers just beyond your reach. But one thing is certain. The return of the gods will not be a simple resurrection. It will not be a moment of divine mercy or a peaceful restoration. It will be a war, a battle for control of the universe itself. The gods who return will not be the same gods who once ruled. They will be changed, their power altered by the passage of time, and they will seek to impose their will upon the world. And the question remains, what role will you play in this return? Will you stand with the gods believing in their power to restore balance? Or will you stand against them, wary of the destruction they may bring? For the divine return is coming, whether you are ready for it or not. The whispers grow louder. The cracks in reality grow wider. The gods stir in their silence, waiting for the right moment to break free from their prison. The question is not if they will return, but when. And when they do, the world as you know it will change forever. Will you be ready? The world around you seems to fade, the edges of reality blurring and softening. You can feel the weight of the silence, the ancient stillness that has gripped the divine for eons, pressing down upon your soul. It is not a peaceful silence, but one filled with the unspoken echoes of things long forgotten, things that should not be forgotten. A presence stirs just beyond your reach, a whisper that seems to come from the very heart of the universe itself. It is El's voice. For all that he has been erased, for all that he has been cast aside, El's voice is not truly gone. It lingers, not in the physical world, but in the deepest folds of time. His words were not simply uttered. They were woven into the very fabric of existence. His voice, once lost to the winds of betrayal, still calls to those who can hear. But this is not a voice that speaks in words as you know them. It is a voice that vibrates through the core of your being, a sound that reverberates not through your ears but through the very essence of your soul. The voice that once shaped the heavens and the earth is now but a whisper, soft and distant, yet carrying the weight of the ages. You were always meant to hear, the voice says, and you feel it deep in your chest, a pulse of ancient power. You, who seek to understand what was lost, who dare to venture into the shadows of forgotten realms, you were meant to find what I left behind. The words hang in the air, not for you to answer, but for you to comprehend. For El's voice is not here to guide you. It is here to remind you. Remind you that the universe is never fully in the hands of those who seek to control it. Remind you that there are forces far older, far more powerful than the gods who rule in their broken pantheon. Remind you that the gods themselves are prisoners of their own desires, locked away in silence, as much a part of the world's decay as anything else. It is in this moment that you come to understand. The gods, even in their exile, even in their brokenness, cannot escape their true nature. They are not benevolent rulers or saviors. They are the architects of the world's creation and its destruction, bound to the cycles of time and fate. And though El has been forgotten, his legacy lingers in the heart of everything. Listen carefully, El's voice whispers. The silence was not meant to be broken by another god, but by you. You who have walked this path, who have dared to delve into the mysteries of the universe. You have uncovered what was lost, but you have also uncovered something deeper, a truth that is more than knowledge. It is the understanding of your place in all of this. The voice is fading now, but its presence lingers, wrapping itself around you like a cloak. You feel both small and vast, caught between the mortal and divine, a being caught in the web of time. You understand now that the power you have uncovered is not the power of gods or kings. It is the power of choice, the ability to see the truth and decide what to do with it. The gods are broken, their voices silenced, but the knowledge they left behind has found its way to you. You are the one who walks the edge of existence, the one who can hear the whispers of the divine and choose how to carry them forward. The gods, once all-powerful, are now mere echoes, fragments of their former selves. But their truth, their legacy, has not been lost. It is in you now as it was always meant to be, and with this truth comes a question. What will you do with it? Will you walk away, leaving the gods in their silence, leaving the mysteries of the universe untouched? Or will you, like El, become a part of the tapestry that weaves the world's future, embracing the unknown and carrying the knowledge of the divine with you? The voice of El fades into the distance, leaving you alone with your thoughts, with your choice. But even in his absence, you feel the weight of his presence. The universe is still in motion, still shaped by the unseen forces that govern it. The gods, though broken, still cast their shadows across the world, and their power still lingers in the air. But you have heard the final whisper of El's voice. It is not a command, but a question for you to answer in your own way with your own heart. The divine return may be a distant dream, a hope of some, but it is you who must decide if the gods will ever truly return. The silence is yours to fill, the knowledge is yours to carry, and the choice is yours to make. If your candle hasn't gone out yet, you might be ready for the next god. The world around you is silent, and yet there is a sound, a distant echo, a murmur carried on the winds, though no one speaks. It's as though the universe itself is breathing with you, waiting for the next step, for the next question to be asked. In the distance, the heavens stir, and for a brief moment you feel the pulse of something ancient, something deep, something that speaks not in words, but in the resonance of existence itself. You turn, and the shadows seem to shift as you walk, stretching out like the remnants of a dream that never quite fades. The gods have fallen, their names scattered across the winds of time. El's voice still lingers, a memory in the quiet, a whisper that reverberates in the spaces between moments. The world is no longer the same, yet it is, in its way, unchanged. The divine is not gone. It has only been made silent. But silence, you know, is not eternal. There are more gods. There are always more. The path that El set in motion has not ended. The forces that shape the heavens and the earth still stir beneath the surface of the world. The gods may be silent, but they are not forgotten. The truth of what they were and what they might become again is out there, woven into the very fabric of time. And for those who dare to listen, the echoes will always be there, waiting to be uncovered. And so, as the last whispers of El's voice fade into the corners of your mind, you know that this is not truly the end. This is only the beginning of a new chapter, one that has yet to be written. The gods will return, but they may not be what you expect. The knowledge you have gained, the truth you have uncovered, will guide you as you walk the edge of this new world, a world that is both ancient and yet still unfolding. For those who listen, for those who hear the whispers of the forgotten gods, there is always more. And as you walk away from the shadows of the past, you can hear it, faintly, growing stronger, the sound of the universe shifting, the sound of the divine returning in ways you have yet to understand. There are more gods. There are always more. And when the time comes, when the whispers grow loud enough to be heard, you will know. The journey does not end here. The story is only just beginning. The next whisper is older still, but only for those who truly listened.